My name is Elena. The view from the 35th floor of the Prudential Center usually made me feel invincible. Today it felt like the edge of a cliff. My company named VitalLink was deep in the final stage of due diligence for our Series B funding round. $20 million was on the table. Every spreadsheet had to be perfect. Every employee had to be on their best behavior. I had spent 10 years building this medical technology from a dorm room idea into a valuation that made Wall Street pay attention. I thought the hard part was over. I was wrong. The door to my glass office opened without a knock. Marcus Stone did not look like my chief compliance officer today. He looked like an executioner. He did not sit down. He simply dropped a thick manila folder onto my pristine desk. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. "We have a problem, Elena," he said. "A catastrophic one." I opened the file. The first page was not a term sheet. It was a subpoena. Beneath that lay a personal credit report bleeding red ink. I scanned the lines and felt the blood drain from my face. There was a defaulted business loan originating in Los Angeles. The outstanding balance was $150,000. "I never signed this," I said. My voice was steady, but my hands were cold. Marcus pointed a finger at the second page. "Look at the collateral." I read the fine print. The loan was not secured by a house or a car. It was secured by the intellectual property of VitalLink. My signature was scrawled at the bottom next to a notary stamp confirming I had pledged my company assets to secure a private loan. "The lead investor found this during their background check this morning," Marcus said. "They are calling it financial fraud. They are threatening to pull the $20 million and sue us for misrepresentation. The board is convening an emergency session. You have 72 hours to prove you did not embezzle this money or you are fired." 72 hours. I looked down at the loan application again. My eyes locked on the borrower address, 1142 Mariposa Avenue, apartment 4B. It was a crumbling apartment complex in the San Fernando Valley. I knew that zip code. I knew that handwriting. It was not a hacker. It was not a clerical error. It was Kayla, my sister. 10 years ago, I was 19 years old and living in a dorm room that smelled like old paper and radiator dust. It was a Tuesday night in November. My phone buzzed on top of a pile of organic chemistry textbooks. The screen said, "Mom." I answered, expecting a lecture about not coming home for Thanksgiving. I did not get a lecture. I got an eviction notice from my own life. "You are going to withdraw from Harvard for the spring semester," Diane said. Her voice was not frantic. It was terrifyingly calm. "You need to pack your things and book a flight home immediately." I sat down on my narrow twin bed. I thought she was joking. Why would I do that? "Why would I do?" I asked. "Because your sister needs you," Diane replied. "The bar is underwater, Elena. We are 3 months behind on the lease, and the liquor distributors are threatening to sue us for unpaid invoices. Kayla cannot handle the vendors. She freezes up when they yell. We need someone with a head for numbers to go in there and restructure the operations." She was talking about the Rusty Anchor, the dive bar she had leveraged her entire retirement fund to buy, because Kayla had convinced her it was a guaranteed gold mine. It was not a gold mine. It was a sinkhole where Kayla poured free drinks for her unemployed boyfriend and ignored the warnings from the health inspector. "You want me to drop out of the Ivy League to manage a failing dive bar for free?" I asked. My stomach twisted into a hard knot. "It is not for free. It is for family," Diane snapped. "And we need the money in your savings account to pay off the distributor. It is only $4,000, Elena. That will buy us enough inventory to stay open through the holidays. You can earn it back later." That $4,000 was not just money, it was my oxygen. It was the result of 2 summers waiting tables and saving every single nickel. It was for textbooks and emergency food and the rent deposit for next year. It was the only thing standing between me and total destitution. "No," I said. The word hung in the air between Boston and Los Angeles like a physical barrier. "Excuse me," Diane hissed. "I said no." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "My scholarship is conditional on full-time enrollment. If I withdraw, I lose my funding. If I leave now, I might never get back in. I am not going to set my future on fire just to keep Kayla warm. She made the mess. She can clean it up." There was a silence on the line that felt heavy and cold. It lasted for 10 seconds. When Diane spoke again, her voice was unrecognizable. It was devoid of warmth. It sounded like a stranger delivering a verdict. "If you choose that school over your family, then you have made your decision," she said. "Do not come back to Los Angeles. Do not call us when you are lonely. You are on your own." The line went dead. I stared at the phone. I thought she was bluffing. I thought she would call back in an hour to guilt-trip me. She did not call back. The next morning, my phone service was disconnected. When I called the provider from a payphone, they told me the primary account holder had removed my line. I called a neighbor back home to check on the house. She told me she saw a locksmith changing the front door tumblers an hour ago. The message was clear. I was an emotional orphan. I spent that winter in Boston shivering in a thrift store coat that was too thin for the wind. I took 3 jobs to survive. I shelved books in the library at dawn. I washed dishes in a dining hall at lunch until my hands were raw and red. I tutored spoiled freshmen in calculus until midnight. I survived on instant noodles and pure rage. That winter killed the girl who wanted her mother to love her. It forged the woman who would later build a $20 million company. I promised myself I would never be vulnerable again. I promised myself I would never let them take what was mine. Back in my office, the atmosphere was sterile and cold. Sarah, my personal attorney, sat across from me with a single document on the mahogany desk. It was an affidavit of forgery. One signature from me would clear my name with the investors and simultaneously launch a federal investigation into my sister. It was the nuclear option. I uncapped my pen. My phone buzzed. The screen flashed a number I did not have saved but recognized instantly. It was a Los Angeles area code. It was Kayla. I answered. I expected begging. I expected a confession about the loan. I did not expect the sound of hysterical crying. "Elena," she gasped. "You have to answer. It is Mom." I held the phone away from my ear. I was not in the mood for games. "What did you do, Kayla?" I asked. "It is not what I did," she sobbed. "It is her health. The doctors just came back with the biopsy results. It is cancer, Elena. Stage 3 ovarian. It has spread." The pen slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the desk. The room seemed to tilt. Cancer. The word was heavy and dark. I tried to process the information through the static in my brain. Diane was only 55 years old. She is at the county hospital. Kayla continued. Her voice was rapid and frantic. "The insurance is refusing to cover the specialist she needs. They want to send her home with pain management because the surgery is considered elective under her plan. You cannot let them do that." I stared at the affidavit. This piece of paper proved Kayla was a criminal who had stolen my identity to secure a $150,000 loan. But now she was telling me our mother was dying. "You are the CEO of a medical company," Kayla said. The desperation in her voice turned sharp. "You know people. You have connections. You have money. You have to fix this. Do not let your past drama make you a monster, Elena. If you do not help her, she is going to die in a hallway." The trap was elegant and brutal. If I signed the fraud papers now, I would be arresting my sister while my mother lay on her deathbed. I would be the villain in their story forever. But if I helped, I was exposing myself to the very people who were trying to ruin me. I felt a wave of nausea. I hated them for the position they put me in. I hated that even now, 10 years later, they still had the power to pull the rug out from under my feet. But I was a human being. I could not ignore a diagnosis like that. I covered the microphone and looked at Sarah. "Do not file the report." Sarah looked alarmed. "Elena, you have a deadline. The board expects a resolution in 72 hours. If we do not act, you lose the company. Give me 48 hours, I said. I stood up and grabbed my jacket. "I am going to Los Angeles." I did not tell Kayla I was coming. I simply hung up. I needed to see the medical charts with my own eyes. I needed to know if this was a tragedy or just another con. The Los Angeles County Hospital smelled like industrial cleaner and stale grief. It was a stark contrast to the pristine private clinics I partnered with in Boston. I walked down the corridor and counted the number of people sleeping in plastic chairs. The air was thick with the humidity of sickness. When I found room 402, I stopped in the doorway. Diane looked terrible. Her skin was the color of old parchment. She was hooked up to a saline drip and her breathing was shallow. The anger I had carried on the flight evaporated. It was replaced by a sharp pang of pity. She was not a manipulator in this moment. She was just a frightened woman dying in a public ward. I walked to the bedside. Diane opened her eyes. They were glassy and unfocused, but they brightened when she saw me. "Elena," she whispered, "you came." I took her hand. It felt fragile, like a bird skeleton wrapped in paper-thin skin. "I am here, Mom," I said. She started to cry. It was a weak sound. She told me how much she missed me. She told me she was proud of the woman I had become. For 10 minutes, I let myself believe it. I let myself be the daughter comforting her mother, but the clock was ticking. Exactly 10 minutes later, the tone shifted. Her grip on my hand tightened. "Your sister is in trouble, Elena," Diane said. Her voice lost its tremolo and gained a familiar edge of urgency. "She is drowning. She owes money to bad people. You have to help her. Consider it my dying wish." The warmth in my chest turned to ice. We were not talking about cancer anymore. We were talking about money. Again. "I need to see your chart," I said. I pulled my hand away and picked up the heavy plastic clipboard hanging at the foot of the bed. Diane protested weakly, but I ignored her. I was not just a daughter. I was a CEO in the medical technology sector. I knew how to read a pathology report. I scanned the pages. The diagnosis was stage 3C ovarian cancer. It was aggressive and serious. However, it was not the immediate death sentence Kayla had screamed about on the phone. The oncologist's notes recommended a debulking surgery followed by a standard chemotherapy regimen. With proper treatment, the 5-year survival rate was promising. She was not dying in a hallway. She was waiting for a surgical slot. Then I looked at the bedside table. It was piled high with envelopes. Kayla brought me the bills. Diane sniffed. "She says we are losing everything." I picked up the stack. I expected to see hospital invoices or final notices for the bar. I flipped through the first envelope. It was not a medical bill. It was a lease agreement for a luxury loft in the Arts District dated 3 weeks ago. The monthly rent was $3,500. I opened the next one. It was a financing statement for a Range Rover Sport. The down payment listed was $20,000. The dates on these documents aligned perfectly with the disbursement date of the fraudulent loan taken out in my name. Kayla had not used my credit to save the family business or treat our mother. She had used it to buy a lifestyle she could not afford to impress a boyfriend she did not need. I looked at Diane. She was watching me with guarded eyes. She did not look confused. She looked defiant. "You knew," I said. The realization hit me like a physical blow. "You knew she forged my signature. You knew she stole $150,000 from me." "She deserves nice things," Diane said. Her voice was suddenly strong. "She stayed Elena. You left. She has been here taking care of me while you play executive in your glass tower. She made a mistake because she was stressed. She needed a break. She committed a federal crime," I said. My voice rose. "She stole my identity. She put my entire company at risk. I am going to the police, Diane. I am going to report the fraud, and I am going to send her to jail." Diane sat up. The heart monitor beeped faster. She looked me dead in the eye and played her final card. It was a card so cruel I could barely comprehend it. "If you file that report, Elena, if you send the police for your sister, I will sign the refusal of care forms." I froze. "What did you say?" "I will refuse the surgery," Diane said. She pointed a shaking finger at the IV line. "I will rip this out. I will refuse the chemotherapy. I will go home, and I will let this cancer eat me alive. And everyone will know it was because my rich daughter cared more about her money than her mother." The room went silent. The only sound was the mechanical hiss of the oxygen valve. I looked at the woman who gave birth to me. I saw the absolute resolve in her eyes. She was holding her own life hostage to protect the golden child. She was willing to die to manipulate me. I stood there holding the evidence of my sister's greed in one hand and my mother's medical chart in the other. The empathy was gone. It was replaced by a cold clarify. I was not dealing with a family. I was dealing with a hostage situation. I walked out of that hospital room without screaming. Screaming does not solve liability issues. Evidence does. I needed to separate the emotional blackmail from the legal reality. I texted Kayla. Meet me at the coffee shop across the street in 20 minutes. I told her I needed to understand the financial situation before I could release any funds. It was a lie. I did not want to help. I wanted a confession. The coffee shop was crowded and noisy, which was perfect. I found a corner booth away from the main door. I took my phone out of my bag. I opened the voice memo app and hit the red record button. Then I placed the phone face down on the table between the sugar packets and the napkins. It looked innocent. It was actually a wire. Kayla arrived 10 minutes late. She did not look like a woman whose mother was dying. She looked annoyed. She slid into the booth and sighed loudly. "You could have just transferred the money, Elena," she said. "You did not have to make me come all the way here." I kept my hands folded on the table to stop them from shaking. I needed her to feel safe. I needed her to feel superior. "I saw the loan documents, Kayla," I said. My voice was quiet. "Why did you use my name? Do you have any idea what this does to my career? If my board finds out, I could lose my job." Kayla rolled her eyes. She waved her hand dismissively, as if I were complaining about a broken fingernail. "Stop being so dramatic," she said. "You earn millions of dollars a year. You are on the cover of business magazines. A $150,000 loan is pocket change to you. It does not even scratch the surface of what you have. I just needed to borrow your credit score for a few months." "It is fraud," I said. "It is a federal crime. It is family." Kayla snapped. "Besides, Mom said it was fine. She agreed with me. She said you owe this family. You walked out on us 10 years ago. You lived your perfect life in Boston while we struggled to keep the lights on. This is just you paying your dues." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Diane had not just covered for her. She had authorized it. They had discussed stealing my identity over dinner like it was a menu option. I needed one more thing. I needed the technical proof. "But the signature," I said. I leaned in closer to the phone. "It looks exactly like mine. And the corporate seal for VitalLink. That is a controlled stamp." "How did you do that?" Kayla smirked. The pride in her eyes made me sick. She thought she was clever. "It was easy," she said. "I traced your signature from your high school yearbook, and I ordered a custom rubber stamp online for the VitalLink seal. I just uploaded your logo from Google Images. It cost me $40, and it arrived in 2 days. Pretty smart, right?" There it was, the confession. She admitted to forgery. She admitted to counterfeiting a corporate seal. She admitted to premeditated identity theft. I looked at my sister. She was sipping her latte, completely unaware that she had just confessed to a felony that carried a mandatory prison sentence. She thought she was winning an argument. She had no idea she had just lost her freedom. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was the death of the last tiny hope that we could ever be sisters again. I reached out and tapped my phone. I stopped the recording. I had the golden evidence. It would clear my name and save my company. But it would also put my sister in handcuffs. I returned to room 402, but I did not come alone. Sarah walked a step behind me, holding a leather briefcase like a weapon. The atmosphere in the room shifted the moment we crossed the threshold. It went from a family gathering to a tribunal. Kayla was sitting in the plastic chair next to the bed, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and saw the suit. She saw the briefcase. Her smug expression faltered. "Who is this?" Diane asked. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were sharp. "This is my attorney," I said. I placed my own bag on the bedside table next to the untouched water pitcher. "We need to finish our conversation, Mom, and we need to do it with witnesses." Diane let out a scoff that turned into a cough. She shook her head against the pillow. "You really are heartless, Elena," she said. "Your sister is sitting right here. I am lying in a hospital bed with cancer, and you bring a lawyer to intimidate us. Is this what they taught you at Harvard? How to bully your own blood?" "It is not bullying," I said. "It is clarity." Diane tried to sit up straighter. She summoned every ounce of maternal authority she had left. "Listen to me, Elena. Family is the only thing that matters. You have millions of dollars in the bank. You have a company. You have a life we can only dream of. Just pay the debt for your sister, sign the papers, make it go away. Do not let me die worrying about whether my baby is going to prison. Be the big sister for once." The speech was perfect. It was the same weaponized guilt she had used on me for 29 years. 10 years ago, it would have crushed me. Today, it just made me tired. "I am not the one who put Kayla in danger," I said. I took my phone out of my pocket. I set it on the overbed table. I turned the volume up to the maximum setting. "What are you doing?" Kayla asked. Her voice pitched high with panic. "I am playing the truth," I said. I hit play. The audio was crisp and clear. The background noise of the coffee shop did nothing to mask Kayla's voice. It was easy. "I traced your signature from your high school yearbook, and I ordered a custom rubber stamp online. I just needed to borrow your credit score." Kayla turned pale. She looked at Diane. Diane did not look at Kayla. She looked at the phone as if it were a bomb. "That is illegal," Kayla screamed. "You recorded me. That is illegal." "Actually, it is not." Sarah spoke for the first time. Her voice was cool and professional. "California is a two-party consent state, but there is an exception for recording evidence of a serious felony involving violence or financial fraud. You just confessed to federal identity theft and bank fraud on tape. Diane tried to pivot, so she made a mistake. She needed the money for the bar. She needed it for us." I nodded at Sarah. Sarah opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of financial records. She laid them out on the bedspread over Diane's legs. They were color-coded. "We traced the disbursements from the loan," I said. I pointed to the highlighted lines. "Look at the dates, Mom. Look at the vendors." Diane looked down. She tried to look away, but I forced her to see it. "There are no payments to oncologists here," I said. "There are no payments to liquor distributors for the bar. Here is a transfer of $20,000 to a luxury car dealership for a down payment on a Range Rover. Here is a charge of $4,000 at a designer boutique in Beverly Hills. Here is a rental deposit for a loft that costs more per month than your entire mortgage used to be." I looked at my sister. "You did not steal from me to save Mom. You stole from me because you felt entitled to a life you did not earn. You bought purses while Mom was getting sick." Kayla shrank back in her chair. She looked like a child caught with her hand in the jar, but there was no innocence in her eyes, only rage. Diane closed her eyes. She did not yell at Kayla. She did not demand an explanation for the wasted money. She looked at me. "It is just money, Elena," she whispered. "You can make more. Please, do not ruin her life over money." I pulled the final piece of paper from my jacket pocket. It was on thick cream stationery. It had the seal of the VitalLink Board of Directors at the top. "It is not just money," I said. My voice shook for the first time. "This is a letter from my board. They gave me an ultimatum this morning. I have 72 hours to prove that I was the victim of fraud. If I cannot prove it, they will fire me for gross misconduct. They will sue me for breach of fiduciary duty. They will strip me of my shares and my reputation." I leaned over the bed. I needed her to understand the gravity of her request. "You are asking me to confess to a crime I did not commit. You are asking me to destroy my entire career. You are asking me to lose 10 years of hard work just so Kayla can drive a Range Rover and stay out of jail." Diane looked at me. I saw the calculation in her eyes. I saw her weigh my life against Kayla's comfort. "She is your sister," Diane said. "She is weak. You are strong. You can survive it. She cannot." The sentence hung in the air. It was the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. I stood up. I felt lighter than I had in years. The grief was gone. The hope was gone. All that was left was resolve. "You forced me to choose Mom," I said. 10 years ago, you forced me to choose between my education and a failing bar. I chose my future. Today, you forced me to choose between my freedom and Kayla's irresponsibility. You want me to set myself on fire to keep her warm." I picked up the phone and the recording. "I will not do it," I said. "This time I choose me." I laid the terms out on the crisp hospital sheets. It was not a negotiation. It was an ultimatum delivered with the precision of a surgeon. "Here is the deal," I said. "I will cover the full cost of the oncology department. The surgery, the chemotherapy, the post-operative care. I will set up a direct billing account with the hospital administration. Not a single penny will pass through your hands. Not a single cent will be available for rent or cars or purses." Kayla looked hopeful for a split second. Then I dropped the hammer. "In exchange, I am submitting the affidavit of forgery to the authorities immediately. I am handing over the audio recording of your confession. I am clearing my name to save my company. I will not ask for a reduced sentence. I will not pay for your defense attorney. You committed a felony and you will face the law." The silence in the room shattered. Diane screamed. It was a raw and animalistic sound that made the nurse in the hallway pause. "You are a monster!" Diane shrieked. Her face turned a violent shade of red. "You are sending your own sister to prison. You are killing our family. I will not accept it. I will die right here in this bed. I will let the cancer rot me from the inside out, just to prove to the world how heartless you are." I stood up and smoothed the front of my jacket. I felt absolutely nothing. The guilt I had carried for a decade had finally evaporated. "That is your choice, Mom," I said. "I threw you a lifeline. I offered to pay for your life. If you choose to drown just to hold Kayla's hand while she sinks, then I cannot stop you." I walked out of room 402. I did not look back at their tears. I did not hesitate. Sarah filed the police report within the hour. The fallout was swift and brutal. The Los Angeles Police Department arrested Kayla the next morning at the luxury loft she had rented with my stolen credit. They led her out in handcuffs past the doorman she tried to impress. The charges were severe: aggravated identity theft, wire fraud, bank theft. Because the theft involved $150,000, the judge set the bail at a number she could not pay. She did not go home. She went to a holding cell. Diane did not die. Fear is a powerful motivator. When she realized I was not bluffing, she signed the consent forms. She got the surgery. But she did not recover in a private suite. I transferred her to a mid-tier nursing facility I selected. It had shared rooms and linoleum floors. It was safe. It was adequate. It was exactly what she needed to survive, and nothing more. 1 year later, the ink was dry on the Series B closing documents. $25 million in fresh capital sat in the VitalLink corporate accounts. The due diligence process that had nearly destroyed me ended up becoming my greatest asset. When I disclosed the fraud and the police report to my investors, they did not run away. They doubled down. They respected a CEO who could cut off a gangrenous limb to save the body. The scandal was over. The legal separation from my family was absolute. The rusty anchor did not survive the winter. Without my credit to prop it up, the business collapsed under the weight of its own mismanagement. The bank foreclosed in January. When the property hit the auction block in downtown Los Angeles, I was the first bidder. The auction was a quiet affair. I did not wear a disguise. I wore a tailored suit, and I stared down the other developers until they lowered their paddles. I paid cash. The deed is now framed on the wall of my office in Boston, but the keys are in my pocket. I stood in the center of the gutted main room. The smell of stale beer and desperation was gone. It was replaced by the clean, sharp scent of sawdust and primer. The neon signs were in a dumpster. The sticky floors were stripped down to the concrete. I walked through the dust motes dancing in the afternoon sun. I was not restoring a bar. I was building an incubator. This space would become the Los Angeles branch of the VitalLink Foundation. It would be a center for female entrepreneurs who needed capital to escape their own traps. I do not visit Diane often. I pay the bills for her facility on the first of every month. That is the extent of my daughterly duty. Kayla is serving her sentence in a minimum security facility 2 hours north. We do not speak. The silence between us is not a punishment. It is a boundary. It is the wall that keeps my life safe. I walked to the large front window and looked out at the street where I once felt so small and helpless. My mother wanted me to burn my future to save this building. Instead, I let the fire burn itself out, and I bought the ashes. I touched the cool glass. I am not angry anymore. I am simply safe. I turned the wreckage of my family into the foundation of my empire. That is the only apology I owe to myself.